California's fires really are a warning to Australia. And the question is, have our politicians prepared for fires here any better than California's politicians have? In fact, once again, we are seeing the complacency that's led in the past to disaster. We've had wet years, few fires, our defences go down, even as fuel loads in the bush, they grow. In New South Wales, for instance, the Rural Fire Service reported ahead of the summer bushfire season that it had achieved not even half of its hazard reduction burn targets. It blamed the weather. But it also has a real problem with volunteers. It said it had 76,000 of them just 4 years ago, but Fire Service boss Rod Rogers recently admitted he's now got just 45,000, what is that, 2/3, trained and ready to go. In Victoria, we had the Prime Minister and the Premier both filmed touring the fires that hit the Grampians a couple of weeks ago. That was a near disaster. But what you weren't told was that the Grampians was in fact one of the areas of the state that hadn't had enough fuel reduction burns either. Now, just before Christmas, you see, the state Labor government had slipped out this report on its bushfire risk management, especially fuel reduction burns, admitting that it had cut the bushfire risk in the Grampians to just 74%, still above its target of 70%. 100% is, off the scale danger. Other parts of the state were even worse, including the parts where there are a lot of houses in the bush, areas where we've had many bushfire tragedies already, the Dandenongs, the hills surrounding Melbourne, as well as Mornington Peninsula. In that area, the bushfire risk was rated 92% going into this summer. It should not be 92%, it should be 85%, and even that sounds far too high. There's just too much vegetation, too much fuel, just waiting for the next big dry and the next big fire. Joining me is one of Australia's top fire experts, for many years has been that, in fact is a legend really, David Packham. He's worked for the CSIRO and then Monash University. David Packham, it's great to see you again. First, what is the lesson that we should learn, a lesson again I suspect, from the California fires?
Well, it's a lesson that we have had repeated time and time again for probably about the last 50 odd years. But when you surround a city, a town, a village with unmanaged parks and forests, and you leave them to deteriorate and build the fuels, sooner or later the third law of thermodynamics says it's going to burn. And it does. That's the first thing.
And yet, I've seen that from covering royal commissions, David, for a couple of them, where they've said you've got to clear the forest floor when you can. But first, the first one of the issues I've raised just before, a lack of fire reduction burns in New South Wales. Now, the RFS is blaming bad weather for them. Is it right, or is it also short of manpower to actually do them?
Well, I think more importantly is a shortage of knowledge of how to do them, because the eastern states of Australia refuse absolutely to hear and understand the mighty world-shattering success of the West Australian fuel management system. They just won't listen to it. It's as if it never occurred. Yet it works, and it works absolutely brilliantly. For example, in the last 40-odd years, we've had 220 deaths or thereabouts in the eastern states. In the same time, in probably a more difficult climate, West Australia has had 2. So they just won't listen, and its politics have become far too more influential in what is a very serious, technical and knowledgeable area that we must work in to achieve the same result as the Indigenous people achieved over 60-odd thousand years when Australia had healthy and safe forests. And the problem with this politics is, well, by analogy, would you want your surgeon to be a good surgeon, or would you want him to have a political advisor with him? It is time to face the facts.
There's the manpower issue, David. How can the New South Wales Rural Fire Service go in 4 years from 76,000 volunteers to today admitting it's actually got just 45,000 who are trained and ready to fight fires?
Well, some of that answer, or in fact a lot of that answer, will go back to the Black Saturday Royal Commission here, where there was a submission taken from an American professor, Herman B. Leonard. Now, Herman B. Leonard is the world's top disaster management academic. He has the John F. Kennedy School. He works in the John F. Kennedy School of Public Administration at Harvard, and he knows his stuff. Now, he has a wonderful submission in there which was totally ignored. It said, central organisation will never work. You cannot, and in fact one army discovered that you cannot work and survive with head office telling you exactly what you have to do because you've got the problem. So they changed, and the old military technique of coordination, command and control was thrown out by this army. And this army is one that has to succeed. The first people to do it was the Israeli army, and they have been successful. So, no, get rid of the central control. The head office is there to help when they're asked. It's the people on the ground who must have the autonomy and the authority to do, well, fuel management on roadsides. A lot of people die on roadsides, and the roadsides and our forests have got the highest level of fuel that Australia has seen in 60,000 years since the Indigenous people came here and since the dinosaurs disappeared. So it is criminal negligence not to deal with this problem in a straightforward and honest way. And it is all connected with extreme green, extreme woke, and extreme climate change pathological science. The science is terrible what's coming out there. And pathological science was a term that was generated by a Nobel Prize winning chemist Irving Langmuir, and when asked what is it exactly, he said it's science that is bunkum.
Yes, well, that's what's come from this mania to create forests without the funds to manage them, and to be fussy about burning when we absolutely needed to protect our settlements, and in fact a lot of animals as well in the end. David Packham, always great to talk to you. Unfortunately, we normally tend to talk to you when there's trouble, but here we are trying to avoid it for once. So thank you very much.
All right, well, I'll think of you as trouble. Okay, mate, thank you.